Okay, this is my second video blog. It's not Harry Potter related, I know, but I feel like making a video because I just had to make one for a friend of mine for some psych thing she needs. So this topic is mermaids and whether they exist or not. Now, I don't know if any of you remember, and by you I mean like the 12 people who are like the only people who comment on our stuff. I went on a little rant about mermaids and the documentary I watched. I ended up downloading it, and it's on my computer now. So it's an hour-and-a-half long documentary that the Discovery Channel did, and it had these 3 or 4 scientists, and they talked about naval sonar effects on whales, and there was this whole thing in 2004 where whale corpses started washing up everywhere. There were just hundreds of corpses in one spot. It wasn't like, you know, one corpse here, one corpse there. There was just groups of corpses from, you know, like whale pods and migration groups, and they ended up on, you know, shores. And 2 of the most prominent locations were Washington, D.C., or it might have been just regular Washington, I'm not sure. And probably regular Washington because they're on the coast, more so than D.C. And then South Africa. So they went, these 3 scientists went to Washington because they were biologists or marine biologists, and they wanted to find out why this was happening all over the world. So they went to take samples and things, and the Navy was there. And the Navy had blocked off this little location, and they were doing something, and you couldn't see what. But well, they couldn't see what, not me, obviously. I wasn't there. I wish. But they had no idea what was going on, and one of the lead scientists wanted to know what was going on, so they stayed as long as they possibly could. And it turns out that the Navy had taken something, and because at first they had thought they were just, you know, there to help with the whales, and were taking samples, you know, down the beach where the Navy had been, a short distance from the scientists. But then when the Navy left, the scientists went down there, and none of the whales in that area had been, you know, autopsied, or no samples had been taken, but it looked like they had taken something from this little area of beach where something had been but wasn't anymore. So, hold on. My friend and her psych project. Completely forgot where I was. Taking something off the beach, yada 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 yada. Yeah. So, you know, they didn't really think, the scientists didn't think too much of it, because what could they possibly think? I mean, the Navy had taken something, sure, whatever. But, in the documentary, someone in the Navy personnel went on anonymously, you know, when they do the whole black silhouette thing, and said that they had taken a mermaid corpse, and they had a little stretch of, not stretch really, I just say that because I was just talking about the beach, and I say stretch of the beach a lot. There's a little piece of video where it just showed a camera closing in on like a little porthole, like as if it was like a tank, like an aquatic tank, and a little porthole window kind of thing, and then, you know, this hand going like that in the window, because it had webs, you know, like a frog kind of thing. I don't know if that was real video. It kind of looked a little bit faked, just because it looked so dramatic, but I mean, it's a freaking mermaid, of course it's gonna look dramatic. Yeah, so then there was that piece of video, but no one had seen that till later. But then so the scientists kept investigating. They were trying to find out what was wrong with the whales and why they were all dying like this. So they took their samples that they had gotten from the corpses in Washington, D.C. Damn it, the other Washington. You know, and they were studying them, and they showed crap, I forgot the word. the dramatization thing with, you know, actors doing what the scientists had done, and it showed the samples under a microscope, and they were like purple samples, but they just had these green dots in them, and apparently what that means is that there was like severe trauma. But then it turns out that the whales had the most trauma near their ears. I think apparently whales have ears. I didn't really know that. Or like their hearing kind of echolocation kind of areas. And so they'd had some kind of direct trauma, and they didn't know what that was from. I mean, it wasn't physical trauma. Like on the outside there was no trauma, but it was internal trauma. So it seemed like some kind of burst of sound had done this. And then it turns out that the Navy had been testing this kind of sonar, and that's what ended up. It was so freaking powerful that it took down the whales all over the world. I mean, I guess they must have tried it more than one time. They couldn't have just done one burst and, you know, start killing whales all over the world. But this new Navy sonar that they were testing ended up killing whales. So obviously the scientists are investigating, and then they start hearing, you know, tales from, you know, eyewitnesses who had first, you know, found the corpses, you know, whatever, early in the morning, when at night the corpses hadn't been there, and they washed up overnight, and, you know, the first person to the beach. And they started hearing stories about things that weren't whales washing up with the bodies. I mean, like corpses. Not like whale corpses, I mean like people corpses, but not people. Human-like, but not like us. And of course, you know where I'm going with this. Mermaids. Hold on, again. I'm telling my friend who's texting me about what she's doing in psych right now. I'm texting her, telling her she's on this video. Sorry. Okay. Sonar damage. Alright, bodies washing up. So then, you know, the whale, they didn't, you know, give any credit to this information. But, I mean, who's gonna believe that freaking bodies of people are washing up with whales? I mean, it's ridiculous, right? Well, not completely ridiculous, because there's the aquatic ape theory, which is what this turned out to be. But, you know, no one's thinking about that. Who first thing come to mind would be there are mermaids. I mean, not mine. No, well, probably mine, because that's something I would think of. But, you know, regular people, scientists and whatnot, they're trying to think of a logical, more normal explanation. So, God, there's so much I could talk about. This is gonna take forever to upload. But, right, so they keep hearing, you know, the stories. And there's another huge whale, you know what I forgot? The bloop recordings. I'll get to that in a minute. There's another, there was another whale, a huge grouping of whale corpses in South Africa. So they ended up going to South Africa. But first, way back in 1997, the whale epidemic was in 2004. In 1997, there was this recording, this sound recording from underwater. You know, when they do like the whales and you hear the whale voices. They heard this other creature, and the creature could communicate. I mean, it had, like, they took it to, like, a vocal specialist, and they could hear, friend. They could, you know, they heard this creature, and they heard, like, these tones in the sound that meant it could communicate with others, and, you know, it was more than one creature. It wasn't just one. It's not like, you know, Loch Ness. Although I could go on that for a while, but I'm not going to. They heard like the creature, and no one ever found out what it was. So they just called it the bloop recording, assuming that it was some kind of weird anomaly. But then in 2004, I forgot to mention this, they heard it again. They had caught the same creature or anomaly on the equipment in 2004. This is 7 years later. So it wasn't just some kind of glitch in the equipment or whatever. This was a creature that's out there. So then they started trying to figure out what it was. It sounded like a dolphin, but they took it to like I guess you could call it a dolphin expert. Other hands over here, expert. But he said it wasn't a dolphin, but it sounded like a mix of like a dolphin and a whale call kind of thing. It had like clicks and things like that, but it wasn't either a dolphin or a whale. It was some unknown species. So they go to South Africa because there are more whales and they want to find out if it's the same sonar going on there, and they find. I'm skipping over some information here because I don't remember it all because it's been like a month and a half, maybe 2, but since I've seen the documentary. But they go to South Africa and they end up finding one of those corpses that the Navy had been so particular in keeping secret the existence of. They didn't want anyone to know that this was going on. So obviously, like, by the way, world, there are mermaids out there, conspiracies and whatnot. So they ended up finding whatever this was, and they thought, oh, this must be whatever our creature is, and they didn't have the whole body, but it had come from a great white shark, because there are a lot of those in South Africa. I assume you've seen the Shark Week and all that. It's all in South Africa. But they pulled the remains of this body out of the shark, and in the shark was this barbed stingray barb, but it didn't look like it had come from a stingray, if that makes sense. It looked like some kind of tool, which I should mention now that for years, hundreds of years, fishermen have been finding what looked like spears and kinds of things in the fish already, or dead fish who look like they've been wounded by some kind of weapon after they're before they get drawn up in the nets. They're already dead fish who've been wounded, and things like that. Legends and tales, whatever, from fishermen from hundreds of years. But in this shark, they found, the guy found a stingray barb, and at the moment, he just thought it was weird, and he took it with him. But they took this corpse that they found. They didn't have much, but what they put together. They had skull fragments. They put together a model of the skull, and it had a ridge at the top of the head, and had it's like a blowhole. But it turns out that it wasn't like a blowhole because they could breathe through their mouth. It was used for communication and echolocation, like a dolphin. They still didn't know what this was. They still didn't really think of aquatic ape mermaid kind of things. But the creature had a beaver kind of tail, not like a whale tail like we think of with mermaids, like Ariel or whatever. It was like a beaver tail, one big paddle kind of thing. Total brain fart. Paddle, and then they started studying what they had of the skeleton, and one of the female scientists, there were 2 men and 1 female, she was studying the hands like the flippers, or whatever they thought they were, and the pelvic bones. And instead of, being like sideways or whatever, like the like normal marine mammals, this was it looked like at some point in time during evolution, this creature had walked upright like us. And then they started thinking aquatic apes, and then they were studying the flippers, and wasn't, just like cartilage or whatever. It looked like hand bones. They were hands. They weren't like a flipper like, normal mammals, whatever. It's a freaking hand. So, they started freaking out. They had just freaking found a mermaid. So, they took a sample of the tissue, because there was still plenty of, like, I don't want to say this, but meat on the bones. So they took a tissue sample and sent it to the lab, whatever. And then the South African authorities came in the early morning when none of the scientists were there, and took all of their evidence. There's actually, you can see, there's a camera across the street, and you can see, it takes pictures every, like, so many seconds, or whatever, and you can see people taking out boxes of things. It's, the authority is taking out these boxes. And it's not like, the scientists have, like, nuclear weapons or anything. They're just taking everything that the scientists have. And then, the scientists are actually basically kicked out of South Africa because their visas had been revoked. So they go back to Washington. And then they get, remember the sample that they had sent? They got that sample back from the authorities. That's the only thing they got back. And, it said that it was totally, they said it was a fraud or whatever, because the sample was so close to human DNA, that's not a word, human DNA, that, that the authorities said it must have been contaminated at one point, and therefore, that, there's like this big contamination sticker on it, which means that even if the scientists wanted to, like, publish their findings or tell what had happened, they'd basically be discredited because it had been deemed contaminated. Which, of course, I mean, believers, know that it wasn't contaminated. It was just really, it was human DNA, basically. Random sound. So yeah, they got the sample back. That barb that they found. Oh, can't see my hand. The barb that they found. Keep doing that. I keep making hand motions, and you can't see my hands down here because I'm sitting close to the camera. It's not gonna work. But, I don't even like that. I look too far away. The barb that he found, they got, one of those random, coral-like spheres. See, this is why I'm awkward on video. Spears, rather. And it fit into, like, the point of one of these spears. So it was a weapon that someone had made. By someone, I mean someone underwater, like a mermaid. But, so yeah, so now they have the bloop recordings, which they got analyzed, I forgot to mention, like, right between Washington, whatever one it was, and, South Africa, between that time period, they got that analyzed, the new one analyzed, the new bloop recording analyzed from 2004, and the expert slowed it down. You could hear, it sounded like people screaming to me, because they got affected by this Navy sonar as well. It's like, imagine like a huge shockwave. You can hear, on the recording, you can hear all the whales, and they sound like you can hear all these animals dying, dolphins dying, whales dying, and then the screaming of the mermaid things. I'm gonna say things, because, you can't know for sure, of course, whatever, I'll find out eventually, but, you could hear these creatures, the blue creatures, or whatever you want to call them, and you could hear them screaming, so it was really, really eerie, so eerie, you have to watch it. But yeah, so that's all they have. They have the 1997 loop recording, they have the 2004 recordings, because there are a few, and they have this barb. But then, they come to realize that I didn't mention this before because I knew I'd have to mention it now. In the Washington the Washington incident, where all the corpses in Washington, they had been found by two boys early in the morning. Like I said earlier, that people finding them early in the morning because they get washed up overnight. In Washington, it was two boys that found them, and they said at first that there was something else on the beach with them. I'm almost quoting. I can hear the documentary in my head. I'm practically quoting it. There was something else on the beach with them that day. That's a quote. That's freaky. And they took a video, but the Navy didn't know this because apparently the Navy always gets caught by video because they never think to check like camera phones and stuff. Because back in 2004, it wasn't like every phone had a camera. It was, not like really popular. They were kind of rare, and they didn't even think about these kids having like camera phones. So they didn't check them, and then it turns out they'd taken a video of whatever it was, but they didn't tell the Navy this because the Navy basically persuaded them. I don't mean tortured, but they persuaded them to change their stories and say, "Oh, it was just another whale. We were just messing around or whatever. We must have been wrong." But the kids kept that video the entire time. They kept that video, and on the video it shows, one of the kids is recording, the other one's walking in the camera view, and they walk over to this pile of seaweed kind of thing. It's this weird shape, and you can see some kind of, it's like a hand kind of thing. It's like, it looks skeletal almost, and it just kind of moves like my hand is doing now, just at once. It looks like the hand's breathing, which of course we all know is not possible, but that's what it looks like. And then the kid gets closer, obviously. He's like, what the hell is going on? You don't really hear sound, but you can tell us what he's thinking. Like, what the heck is going on here? So he gets closer, he gets like a stick, like kids do. He's probably like preteen-ish, maybe 14, 15. That's what we all do. We poke things with sticks. So he gets a stick, he goes over to poke it. This freaking creature attacks him. The creature's still alive. The creature gets up, and not gets up, but like, if you're lying face down and you kind of like push yourself up, that's what this creature did, and you tried to like bite/swipe at him. And then the video kind of not cuts out, but all you see is, the kid with the camera and running away. You just see his feet. Kind of like you do in like horror movies. They have that video. It does look fake to me, but I really, really, really want to believe it. So then that's the evidence they have. That's the evidence that they put in the documentary. I mean, they obviously told their story of how all their evidence got taken. They told this entire thing. It's remarkable. And they told this kind of epilogue kind of thing, where they went out. They surmised, the three scientists surmised, my hand was bent in a weird way. They surmised that the mermaids had this kind of, I don't want to say deal, but like this agreement with the whales and the dolphins, and they all migrated together. Because, as a side note, the scientists, they're marine biologists, so they know a lot. They said dolphins, in certain areas of like South America and places like that, and even off like the Asian coast, dolphins every like so often will come in and chase fish to shore to help the fishermen. Like it's like one day a year or something like that. And then the marine biologists, part of their evidence is, where did the dolphins learn this from? The mermaids. So of course they're surmising, like I said, that they're migrating with whales and dolphins all together on the same path, at the same time, all like in a cluster together. So they go out, the three scientists on a boat with the sound recorder, an underwater sound recorder, sonar kind of thing. Not, obviously like Navy power. I mean like the things that pick up like whale sounds and stuff like that. And apparently they don't have the thing, as the actual sound, as I'll explain in a minute. They heard the creature. The creature was out. The creatures, not like one. the species is out there. It's with the whales. But then the Coast Guard, or Navy, or National Guard. Coast Guard or the Navy. They come up in a boat and they take everything on the boat, including the everything they have. Just every piece of evidence that was on the boat. Not like the bloop recordings and the video. I mean like the recordings from that day they took. They took everything they had from that day. And eventually, like within the next year, all of the scientists got let go. So that's basically all I got. That's called the conspiracy at work. So yeah. Oh, it didn't work. I clicked it. I didn't know if it had I trying it with my mouse. You know, when you don't use your mouse for a long time, and it like you have to like click it and shake it to get it to start. I had my mouse over the camera button, so I thought it'd stop recording, but it didn't, as you obviously can tell. Yeah, that's really all I got. If you want me to give you the link to the documentary, it's on YouTube. The entire thing. It's an hour and a half long. I posted it ages ago, so it's somewhere on the page. But all you really have to do is put in Mermaids : the body found into the search bar on YouTube, and you'll find it. Yeah. So, any questions, comments, concerns, post them here. Someone please watch this. I feel dejected. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna go. Goodbye.